we're a community-based organisation that's been in existence for just over 30 years, and our motto is that we're here to preserve the beach for everybody to use. We use a lot of volunteers from within our organisation and outside, and we work very closely with the foreshore and park rangers that are part of the Frankston Council. What we're witnessing is a lot of change. Frankston's beach is exposed to predominantly what's known as littoral drift. And what littoral drift is where you get wave action coming into the beach at different angles at different times of the year. It causes sand to be scoured away from the beach and drifted either north or south. So we have a pattern where for 6 months of the year the sand travels north via the waterway and gets deposited on the beach, and then generally speaking for the other 6 months of the year the sand comes back again and is deposited back on the beach. Since probably 2008, the last 5 years or so, that has started to change. The reasons, perhaps the jury's out on that, but what's happened is that at the end of each of those seasons you would probably find there's been a net depletion of sand on Frankston's beach, and there I'm talking about the beach predominantly south of the pier down to the rock wall at the foot of Oliver's Hill. So that net depletion has led to quite severe erosion, as in loss of the beach. And secondly, there's been a lot of erosion into the primary dune. A lot of people would have witnessed the sort of vertical drop of sand, something like 2 metres high, around the Coast Guard area, and that has just been caused by the wave action pounding into the dune system. The end result in terms of the amenity of the beach means that the boardwalk has been compromised and had to be repaired because it was exposed and unstable. Well, I think the beach re-nourishment project, which is happening right now, that involves huge amounts of sand coming from inland quarries and being deposited on the beach. The endeavour is to reclaim the beach south of the creek where most of the damage has been witnessed. The only concerns, I think it's to be applauded, it's a good partnership between council and the department, what was DSE. The concern though is, will it work? It's like building a huge sandcastle and watching the tide change and the waves come in. The actual causes, the things that cause the sand to be lost, are still there. So some of my colleagues are concerned, well, the next big wind we have, we get a 3-day storm, it will be just a huge sandcastle dragged out to sea. So there's questions over just how long it will last. There's evidence up the bay at Asphodel or Edithvale where a replenishment project like that has worked. But I think working just means more years of life that the sand will stay there. I don't think anybody realistically would expect that sand will be there for a generation to come. So I think it's a temporary measure. Let's hope the temporary means 10 years, not 1 year. But nonetheless, I think that is to be applauded. So that's the first sort of action. Second one is to continue our vigilance over revegetation of the dune system, keeping beach traffic, pedestrian traffic, off the dune system, and also as they re-nourish the beach, they are going to rebuild the front of the dune that's been lost to the elements, and an important part of the Frankston Beach Association will be to engage with council to revegetate as best we can. It's going to be very hard to revegetate a whole pile of new sand, but it will adjoin the old current dune system, and our endeavour will be to try to migrate the vegetation onto that new sand progressively over a number of years. Let's hope we can do that at a rate that is faster than the rate of attrition of the sand. So there's a risk there, but that's an important action. And I think finally, and one of the most important, is we should be very mindful to avoid building major structures either on the beach, near the beach, or on the dune system. I know we do go through assessment processes, and there can be planning panels and all sorts of interrogations, but the end result is that we just up the pecking order. We have to move the environmental assessment, the impact of these things up that chain of assessment, have it as a higher criterion, rather than we feel at the moment there's too many other economic and perhaps social factors that are taken into account, and the environment is there but it's well down the list.
My unit's responsible for the maintenance of around 50 reserves and of the foreshore, and we also have the Indigenous nursery. It also involves beach cleaning of the foreshore, and we do fire danger period works and fire patrolling in our natural reserves as well. I guess the most obvious effects we see are is sea level rise and storm surge. So working down the coast, I guess there's always natural dynamic changes in the foreshore, but also I guess over time we're seeing more extensive damage from storm surges in particular. So we've got a comprehensive beach cleaning program in place. So we do programmed cleaning, and there's peaks and troughs depending on the time of year. So over winter it's quite minimal cleaning, but over summer it's every day. But we also, when we do have a large storm, we have to focus our efforts on cleaning up after that. To make the area safe is always the number one key. So we have a lot of foreshore access points that as soon as we get some extreme winds, they can cause big drop-offs where there can be a metre or two drop-off, and if people went to walk out on that they could be injured. So we go down and temporarily close those, or we move sand to reopen those, and it's quite hard in those situations. There's not necessarily a permanent answer to that. That's just being reactive to the dynamic environment of the foreshore. So on the beach behind me on the pier, they just started a beach renourishment project. So that's trucking in quarried sand to increase the width of the beach. That's going to create a great recreational asset, but also protect the dunes and the boardwalk behind that. And of course, you can see behind me where the pier was damaged from storms this year. So council's been very quick to move to repair the pier by summer. There's the sort of effects that can happen. That was just over sort of a 6 to 8 week of extreme weather event. Moving forward as well, it's also been strategic. So we've recently done a foreshore condition audit where we had a consultant assess the entire foreshore. He picked up every asset on GIS and gave it a rating, whether it needed to be replaced and how susceptible it was to further damage from coastal processes. So that'll give us an idea going forward. If there's a section of fence down at Seaford that's damaged but it's not actually required, if it's not actually doing anything, we can just remove that and move fencing somewhere else that's more critical. And it'll also tell us the key hotspots for erosion in some areas as well that we need to be aware that we need to put additional infrastructure in.
At the moment I'm the president of Kananook Creek Association, which is a group that was formed about back in 1972, I think it was. So that's 41 years ago, and it had the aim of cleaning, restoring and preserving Kananook Creek and its environment. But Kananook Creek runs for its length, which is only 7.5 kilometres, it's true, at sea level. There's no natural, as I've said, there's no natural flow into the creek. So what happens at one end and what happens at the other end is basically the same if the level of the sea in Port Phillip Bay rises. So the creek will be affected at either end. It's not a matter of the sea suddenly sort of flooding into the streets, but the stormwater drains that run into the creek to clear the water from the streets will fill up in the wrong direction and they'll suffer from backwash. However, a fairly small thing that could be done, I suppose, is instead of stopping the water level of the creek rising, we could deepen the depth of the creek by dredging.